Lonely woman takes an ugly abandoned child. Years later, the father returns with a shocking truth. Alara's world was a small, quiet one, bounded by the whispering reeds of the Blackwater fen and the four stone walls of her cottage. Loneliness was a constant companion, a chill no fire could ever truly banish. It had been her only companion since the fever took her family, leaving her alone with a name the villagers whispered with a mix of pity and suspicion: the Fen Witch. Her evening walk was a ritual, a path along the murky water's edge to gather bitterroot. The sun bled into the mist, painting the world in shades of violet and gray. It was then she heard it, not the croak of a frog or the splash of a fish, but a thin, reedy wail that was unmistakably human. Her heart, a dormant thing, gave a painful thud. Following the sound, her boots sinking into the soft peat, she pushed through a thick curtain of bulrushes. And there it was, a crude basket half sunk in the muck, and within a bundle of rags from which the wretched sound emerged. With trembling hands she lifted the bundle. The rags fell away and Alara gasped, nearly dropping the child. It was not just unfortunate looking, it was profoundly ugly. A large veiny head seemed too heavy for its scrawny neck. Its skin was a mottled, blotchy red, and one eye was sealed shut by an angry purple birthmark that spread across its temple like a spilled stain. The other eye, a startlingly clear blue, stared up at her, wide with a primal hunger and fear. No note, no token, just abandonment. This was no simple case of a peasant family leaving a daughter to fate. This was something else. This was disposal. The child's wail hitched into a weak, hiccuping sob. Its tiny, malformed hand flailed and brushed against her wrist. The touch was feverishly warm, terrifyingly fragile. Every instinct told her to put it back, to walk away. This child brought trouble. She could smell it on the wind. But as she looked into that one clear blue eye, she saw not a monster, but a profound loneliness that mirrored her own. It was a reflection of her own abandonment by God, man, and fate. "Hush now," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. She pulled the rags tight around the shivering infant and held it against her chest, its head fitting awkwardly in the hollow of her throat. "Hush now, little one. You're safe." She turned her back on the reeds and the sinking basket, carrying her impossible, ugly burden home. The cottage door closed behind them, shutting out the gathering dark, and for the first time in decades, Alara's house was not silent. The first night was a trial by fire. The child, a boy she discovered, would not suckle on the rags soaked in goat's milk she offered. He turned his head, his cries growing weaker, his blotchy skin growing cool. Panic, sharp and unfamiliar, clawed at Alara. He was dying in her arms, this child she had chosen, and her loneliness would return, deeper and more absolute than before. Desperate, she remembered the bitterroot. It was a powerful relaxant, used in poultices for swelling. Perhaps a tiny amount, diluted, would ease whatever internal anguish gripped him. She prepared a weak tea, letting a single drop fall between his lips. Within minutes, his frantic squirming ceased. His tiny body went limp, his breathing evening out into a soft rhythm. The one blue eye fluttered open, no longer wide with panic, but calm, gazing at her with an unsettling depth. He made a small, gurgling sound, not a cry of pain, but a noise of recognition. It was impossible. From that night on, he thrived on a diet of goat's milk infused with the most minute amounts of her herbal concoctions. Chamomile for rest, mint for digestion, and always a hint of bitterroot. He seemed to need it, to crave it. Without it, he would become listless and feverish. With it, he was calm, watchful. The villagers, of course, came to know. Her rare trips to the market for supplies were now accompanied by the child swaddled tightly and hidden in a sling against her chest. Whispers followed her like a tide. She stole a child, some said. A changeling, others muttered, left by the fen folk. Look at its mark. See how it never cries, a familiar, the more superstitious claimed. The witch has finally made her pact. Alara heard them all, her back straight, her face a stony mask. Their fear meant safety. They would not trouble her. Weeks turned to months. The boy's head grew more proportional, though the birthmark remained a lurid purple stain. His good eye was a piercing blue, and he began to show a quiet, observant nature. He rarely laughed, but he would watch the dust motes dance in a sunbeam, or the simmering of a pot over the fire with an intense, unnerving focus. He needed a name. The villagers called him Creature, or It. She would not. One evening, as she prepared his milk with a drop of bitterroot tincture, he made that same soft gurgle. The firelight caught his blue eye, and for a moment it seemed to glow with a gentle internal light. He was her found thing, her unexpected solace, drawn from the deepest, most forgotten waters. Kael, she whispered, testing the sound. It was an old word from a half-remembered story, meaning pool of light. The child Kael turned his head at the sound. His mouth, often downturned, twitched into what might have been a smile. Ilara's own heart, the dormant thing, gave a fragile, hopeful bloom. Years woven from routine and quiet understanding settled over the cottage. Kyle grew from a hideous infant into a strange, silent boy of 5. The cruel purple birthmark still dominated the left side of his face, pulling at his eyelid and twisting the corner of his mouth into a permanent, slight frown. But to Ilara, it was simply Kale. It was the map of where she found him. He was her shadow, trailing her as she gathered herbs, his small hand often clutching the hem of her skirt. He never spoke a word. The village physician, a kind but baffled man she once visited in desperation, declared him a simpleton, likely mute. But Ilara knew better. Kyle's silence was not empty. It was deep. He understood everything. A pointed look from his clear blue eye could convey more than a torrent of words from another child. His connection to the herbs was the true mystery. He could not just tolerate them, he seemed to commune with them. Ilara often found him sitting motionless in her small garden, his good eye closed, his small hand resting on the leaves of a valerian plant, as if listening to its secrets. When she distilled her tinctures, he would watch the simmering pot, his head cocked. And once when she turned her back, she swore she saw the bubbles in the liquid slow and dance in a pattern that defied the fire's heat. She taught him letters by scratching them in the ashes by the hearth. He learned with preternatural speed, his mind a thirsty sponge. She told him stories, not the gentle fairy tales of princesses, but the old dark myths of the fen, the willow man who dragged the greedy down into the peat, the marsh lights that led travelers astray, the forgotten gods of stone and spring. He listened to these with rapt attention, his expression unreadable. Their isolation was a fortress. The village children, egged on by their parents, would sometimes dare each other to throw stones at the witch's monster from a distance. Kel would simply turn his marred face toward them, not with anger or fear, but with a placid, unnerving acceptance that always sent the children fleeing faster than any shout could. One such day, Ilara found him standing by the fence, a small trickle of blood on his temple from a well-aimed rock. Rage, cold and fierce, rose in her. She started toward the retreating figures, but a small hand on her arm stopped her. Cal looked up at her and shook his head slowly. He pointed to the blood, then to the wet ground, and made a gentle pressing motion with his palm. Let it go. Let the earth take it. He was not like other boys. He was not even like her. He was something else entirely, and in the quiet sanctuary of their life, Ilara loved him fiercely for it. He was her son, her strange and silent son, and their world of two was complete. The first crack in their peaceful world appeared on a market day. Cal was 7. Ilara needed salt and thread, necessities she could not produce herself. She always left Cal hidden in the cottage on these trips, the door barred, with strict instructions to tell no one she was gone. It was safer for them both. The market square of Blackwater Creek was its usual bustle of noise and judgment. Ilara moved through it like a ghost, her head down, exchanging a few clipped words and her bundled herbs for goods. She felt the stares, heard the conversations hush as she passed. She was used to it. It was the stranger who put her on edge. He was a tall man, too well dressed for this muddy village, in a traveler's cloak of fine, dark wool. He wasn't browsing the stalls. He was watching, his eyes a flinty gray, scanned the crowd not with the curiosity of a visitor, but with the sharp assessment of a hunter. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. A cold jolt passed through Elara. There was no recognition in his gaze, only a cold, impersonal interest that was far more frightening. She quickly looked away, her heart hammering against her ribs. She finished her trade with clumsy haste, her skin crawling with the sense of being tracked. As she hurried down the path back to the fen, the feeling persisted. The woods seemed too still. The cheerful chirping of birds had ceased. She glanced over her shoulder more than once, seeing nothing but the dense, dark tree line. Paranoia, she told herself, a product of a lifetime of suspicion. She arrived home breathless, slamming the door shut and barring it. Cal looked up from where he was arranging stones into a complex spiral pattern on the floor. His blue eye widened at her state. "Did anyone come?" she asked, her voice tight. Cal shook his head. He pointed to her, then to his own heart, a question in his eyes. "You are afraid?" "It's nothing, little light," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "Just the wind playing tricks." But that night, as she tried to sleep, the man's flinty eyes haunted her. He was not from the village. He was not a traitor. He was looking for something. A dread, cold and heavy, settled in her stomach. For 10 years, she had kept Cale's existence a poorly kept secret among locals she understood. This felt different. This felt like the world, vast and cruel, finally knocking at their door. The next morning, she found the first marker. Tied to a post of her rickety fence was a strip of black cloth, knotted in a peculiar, complex way. It fluttered in the fen wind like a dead thing. It was no accident. It was a sign. Someone had been here. Someone knew. The strip of black cloth was a brand seared onto their piece. Elara snatched it from the fence post, her fingers trembling. The knot was intricate, a series of interwoven loops that felt deliberate and alien. It was a message, a claim, a threat. She threw it into the fire and watched it curl and blacken, but the dread it brought would not burn away. Their routines became fortified. She no longer walked the fen paths for pleasure. Her herb gathering was done swiftly, with Cale always within arm's reach. She taught him new words: hide, silence, danger. He learned them with a sober gravity that broke her heart. Days passed, tense and watchful. Nothing happened. The silence of the fen grew oppressive, a held breath. Elara began to hope it had been a random occurrence, a trapper's forgotten snare, her own fear giving it meaning. She was wrong. A week later, a second marker appeared. This one was inside her garden, tied to the stem of her prized moon blossom plant. The message was brazen. Whoever was doing this had walked right up to her home while they slept. The knot was different this time, tighter, more aggressive. Cal saw it before she did. He pointed, his face pale beneath his birthmark. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw real fear in his clear blue eye. He made a clutching motion at his throat. "It's all right," she whispered, pulling him close. "Mama's here." The lie tasted like ash. She was a recluse with a knowledge of herbs. She was no match for a determined hunter. That night, she took her late father's old skinning knife from its chest and placed it under her pillow. Sleep was a distant country. Every rustle of the reeds, every creak of the cottage timber was the approach of the man with flinty eyes. Just before dawn, a sound did come. Not from outside, but from within. A soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap on her bedroom window. Her breath froze. She slid the knife from under her pillow, her hands slick with sweat. Slowly, silently, she crept out of bed. Cal was asleep in the next room. She had to see. Peering around the edge of the shutter, she saw not a face, but another message. Tied to a branch propped against the pane were 3 more black strips, each knotted identically in a new, complex pattern. They swayed in the pre-dawn light. This was no longer a warning. It was a demonstration of power. They could reach her, anywhere, anytime. They were toying with her. The message was clear. We can take what is ours whenever we wish. Elara sank to the floor, the knife clattering from her hand. She was not just afraid. She was defeated. They were coming for Kyle. A storm broke over the fen, as if the sky itself mirrored the turmoil in Alara's heart. Wind howled around the cottage, rattling the shutters and driving rain against the stones in horizontal sheets. It was a perfect night for dark truths. Huddled by the fire, with Kale wrapped in a blanket beside her, Ilara knew she could wait no longer. The knotted messages were a countdown. She had to tell him. He had to understand. Kale, she began, her voice barely a whisper against the storm's roar. You remember the stories I tell you? Of the world outside the fen? He nodded, his blue eye fixed on her, reflecting the flickering flames. There are people in that world, people with power. Not the small power of herbs and kindness, but a hard, cold power. The kind that leaves children in baskets to drown. He went very still. He had never asked about his origins. It was a silent understanding between them. I found you, she said, the memory as sharp as the day it happened. In the reeds. You were so small, so different. She reached out and gently touched the edge of his purple birthmark. He didn't flinch. I thought this was why they left you. I thought they saw only something ugly, something to be discarded. Cal's hand came up and covered hers, his small finger surprisingly strong. But I was wrong, Alara continued, a tear tracing a path through the lines on her cheek. The man in the market, the black knots, they are not from someone who is ashamed. They are from someone who is looking. They are a claim. I think you were not abandoned out of cruelty, Kale. I think you were hidden or stolen, and I think the person who left you there is coming back. She told him about the well-dressed stranger, his hunter's eyes. She described the knots, their sinister precision. Cal listened, absorbing it all. His silence was no longer just the quiet of a mute boy. It was the deep, heavy silence of a burden being shouldered. When she finished, the only sound was the crackle of the fire and the wail of the wind. Kyle looked from her tear-streaked face to the storm raging outside the window. He did not cry. He did not look scared anymore. He looked resolved. He uncurled himself from the blanket and walked to the small table where she kept her herbs. He pointed to the bitterroot, then to himself, and then to the window, toward the heart of the storm. He then made a sweeping motion with his arm, as if pushing something away. Ilara understood. The bitterroot. His strange need for it. His connection to it. It wasn't a weakness. It was a part of him. And the storm outside was not just a threat. It was a weapon. Her strange, silent son was not a victim waiting to be found. He was something else, and he was ready. He came the next evening, as the storm's aftermath left the world glistening and bruised. There was no stealth this time. The sound of a horse's hooves, slow and deliberate, approached the cottage through the muddy path. Then silence. A firm, authoritative knock shook the door. Ilara's blood ran cold. She looked at Kale. He stood in the center of the room, perfectly still. He gave a single, slow nod. She unbarred the door and opened it. The man from the market stood there. Up close, he was older than she'd first thought, perhaps in his late 40s, with sharp, aristocratic features and hair the color of iron. His fine clothes were mud-spattered. His flinty eyes took in the humble cottage, the herb-drying racks, and finally settled on her with cold disdain. Then they moved past her and found Cull. A strange, complex emotion flickered across the man's face. Not joy, not relief, but a sort of grim satisfaction, like a mathematician finding the solution to a long, vexing problem. You have something that belongs to me, he said. His voice was deep, cultured, and devoid of warmth. There is nothing here that belongs to anyone but me, Ilara said, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. The man's lip curled. Do not play the foolish peasant with me, woman. I know what you found in the reeds. I have come for my son. The words struck Ilara like a physical blow. My son. She had dreaded them, yet hearing them aloud made the world tilt. She gripped the doorframe for support. You left him to die, she spat, anger giving her strength. I left him for his own protection, the man countered, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous pitch. There were forces that sought to use him. His condition made him vulnerable. It was necessary to hide him until the danger passed, until I could secure his inheritance and return for him. His condition? Alara whispered. The man finally stepped inside, his presence filling the small room. He ignored her completely, his eyes fixed on Kyle. The modeling, the weakness, it required specific treatment, a regimen. You clearly haven't followed it. You've let him languish here, in this hovel. His gaze swept over Kale's simple clothes, his quiet stillness. He looks like a half-wit. No matter. That can be corrected. He took another step toward Kale. Come, boy. Your time living in the mud with this witch is over. You are Theron of House Valerius. You have a destiny. Kale didn't move. He simply looked at the man, his father, with his one clear blue eye. There was no recognition, no fear, no longing, only assessment. He's not going with you, Alara said, stepping between them. You have no proof. You are nothing but a stranger who tells convenient stories. The man Theron finally looked at her again, and his expression was one of pure, unadulterated contempt. He reached into his cloak and pulled out not a document, but a small, dark velvet pouch. He loosened the drawstring and tipped a single object into his palm. It was a necklace, a polished, gray stone, the color of a stormy sky, shot through with veins of vivid electric blue. It pulsed with a faint inner light. It was the exact color of Kale's birthmark, the exact color of his eye. As the stone caught the light, Kyle's head twitched. A sharp, pained gasp escaped his lips. The first sound of true distress Alara had heard from him in years. He took an involuntary step forward, his hand reaching toward the stone. Theron smiled, a cold, victorious thing. The proof is in the blood, and the blood calls to the stone. He knows it, as he knows the remedies he truly needs, not the peasant weeds you've been feeding him. He held the necklace out. Come, son, claim your birthright. The pulsing light from the stone seemed to fill the cottage, casting shifting, watery shadows on the walls. Cal was caught in its thrall, his body trembling, his breath coming in short, ragged hitches. The stone was a siren's call, and his very blood was answering. You see, Theron said, his voice smooth and triumphant. The ether stone does not lie. It calls to the power in his blood, a power you could never understand, woman, a power that was stifled here, fed on goat's milk and weeds when it required so much more. Alara's mind raced. The bitter root, Kyle's need for it, his connection to the plants. It wasn't a weakness or an ailment. It was a dim echo of whatever this stone represented. Theron hadn't left a sick child to die. He'd hidden a powerful one, and the herb she'd given him had been a pale substitute, barely keeping the embers of his true nature smoldering. What is he? Alara breathed, her eyes fixed on Kale's agonized face. He is the last heir of a lineage that can touch the essence of the world, Theron said, his chest swelling with pride. We are called ether kin. Our blood allows us to sense and shape the fundamental energies of creation. His mother, Theron's face darkened. She was attacked while carrying him. The poison meant for her marred him, blocked his connection, made him sickly and weak. It required a specific, rare treatment to counteract it. A treatment I now possess. He patted a different pouch on his belt. I have spent a decade securing it and eliminating those who sought to end our line. Now I have come to make him whole. He took another step toward Kale, the stone dangling hypnotically. The world of men is not for you, boy. Your place is with me, learning the arts of our kind. You will be strong. You will be powerful. You will be respected and feared, not hidden away like a shameful secret. His words were a carefully crafted weapon, designed to prey on the loneliness of a boy who had never fit in. Theron offered power, purpose, and a name, everything the Fen could not. Kale's trembling stopped. His outstretched hand wavered. He slowly turned his head, his gaze shifting from the mesmerizing stone to Alara. Her heart was shattered glass in her chest. She saw the longing in his eye, the desire to be unshackled from his broken body, to understand the strange pull he felt to the rain and the roots. How could her love, the love of a lonely woman in a cottage, compete with that? She had no magic stones. She had no grand destiny to offer. She had only what she had always given him. Tears streamed down her face freely now. She didn't beg. She didn't command. She simply opened her arms, a silent offering of all she was. Her voice was a broken whisper, filled with a love so vast it ached. "You will always have a home here," she said, "no matter what you choose." The cottage was silent save for the crackle of the fire. Theron smirked, confident in his victory. Cal looked at the powerful, handsome man who was his father, who offered him a legacy of strength. He looked at the pulsating stone, which promised to unlock the mysteries of his own soul. Then he looked at Alara, at her worn hands, her tear-filled eyes, her open arms that had carried him from the reeds. He saw the garden where they had knelt together, the hearth where she had taught him letters, the silent, unwavering acceptance that had been his entire world. His blue eye cleared. The pull of the stone seemed to lessen. He took a step, not toward Theron and the glittering destiny, but toward her. He walked into her embrace, bearing his marred face in the rough wool of her dress. His small arms wrapped around her waist and held on tightly. The choice was made, not for power, but for love. The end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more African heartwarming stories. Thanks for watching.